York Post, Reverend Jackson says that Senator Obama, if elected president, would lessen the influence of, quote, Zionists on American foreign policy, and that decades of putting Israel's interests first would end under President Obama. Reverend Jackson reportedly made those remarks to the World Policy Forum in France last week. Senator Obama's campaign released this statement in part. Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. is not an advisor to the Obama campaign and is therefore in no position to interpret or share Barack Obama's views on Israel and foreign policy. As he has made clear throughout his career and throughout the campaign, Barack Obama has a fundamental commitment to a strong U.S.-Israel relationship. As president, he will ensure that Israel can defend itself from every threat it faces. A spokesperson for Senator McCain's campaign says, quote, literally nobody knows what Barack Obama's policies would be if he were elected president, but it's very concerning that people believe he will not be a friend to Israel. And Reverend Jackson, he's also now responding to the report. He said this in part: the recent column in no way represents my views on Middle East peace and security. The writer is selectively imposing his own point of view and distorting mine. Reverend Jackson is not a representative of Senator Obama. He has never had a conversation with Senator Obama about Israel or the Middle East and was not characterizing his views on these issues. Joined us by phone is former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, who has just released a new documentary about America's energy future called We Have the Power. Welcome, Mr. Speaker.
Listen, it's great to be with you, and this is one of those amazing moments when I think the curtain kind of rises a little bit and you see what's going on behind the curtain, and you have to believe that what Reverend Jackson said last week in France is very close to what he personally believes will happen, and of course is radically different than what the Obama campaign would like people to believe, at least through the election. Why should we believe that about that Reverend Jackson, that maybe it's just Reverend Jackson talking again, although I mean there is the problem with the sort of the three strikes you're out. In 1984 he had that terrible remark about Jews that was not well received, to say the least, and of course he also made the comment back in July of this year when he said Senator Obama talks down to people. So but nonetheless, why should we believe this isn't just Reverend Jackson spouting off again? Well, I don't know that you can render a judgment, but if you look at the comments and the attitudes of Reverend Wright, who clearly would be very close to Jesse Jackson and these attitudes. If you look at the attitude of William Mears, the American terrorist, who clearly would be very close to Jesse Jackson in these attitudes. If you look at the role that Jesse Jackson's son has played in the Obama campaign and the role that they played in Obama's rise, both to state senator and then ultimately to the U.S. Senate, I'm not suggesting that we know definitively. All it reminds everyone is that we don't know. That Senator Obama is brilliant at taking positions that are very carefully calculated and very carefully thought out. He voted president over 130 times in the Illinois State Senate, and when you look at the legislature that he was in, when it was that controversial, he somehow managed to vote present in order to avoid letting us know anything about how he feels. And so I think that what was intriguing to me was that you have to ask, who is Senator Obama going to appoint to the State Department? Who's he going to appoint as ambassadors? Who's going to be his national security advisor? And are these people who start with a realistic understanding of the threat to annihilate Israel, or are these people who start with a kind of utopian fantasy that if we only all sit down with Ahmadinejad, which, as you know, Senator Obama has personally said he would like to do without any preconditions. Now, that was early on. He's modified that, to be fair. Under a great deal of criticism, he backed off a half step. But it told you kind of psychologically where he was at. This is a guy who sees no evil, learns from no evil, fears no evil. And in the real world, that might be pretty dangerous. Mr. Speaker, should he make a statement? The statement that I read moments ago was one that came from his campaign. Does this warrant, I mean, maybe tactically I should ask, should he speak to people about this, Senator Obama himself? Now, if you remember with Reverend Wright, he denounced his words until Reverend Wright took a slap at him personally at the press club, and then he denounced him. But is this the kind of thing that would strategically be wise for him to get out in front of? Well, I communicated today with several good friends in the Jewish community who are deeply concerned about literally the danger of a second Holocaust and the annihilation of Israel. And every single one of them was stunned and frankly, deeply, deeply motivated by these comments. And I think that Senator Obama owes it to the American people to explain what his positions are, because the question of the survival of Israel, we have a Holocaust museum in Washington, and people talk about never again. Well, if you really mean never again, then you have to really worry about everything from the local terrorism of Hamas and Hezbollah to the effort by the Iranians to get nuclear weapons. And you have to recognize that there's the depth of anti-Israeli belief and the depth of anti-Semitism that is easy for those of us who are not directly under the threat to ignore. But it's very real and it's very powerful. And I think that Senator Obama should address it in a very direct way.